Gottfried Wilhelm von Leibniz. Welcome back to Philosophy Talk. I'm with René Descartes, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Adam Smith, and John Locke, all well-known philosophers. Today we will be discussing the issue of gender inequality and what effect it has on religion, culture, education, occupations, and independence. Why don't you tell us about yourself and some of your views, René Descartes?
Well, Mr. Leibniz, I was born on March 31st, 1596 in La Haye-Touraine, France. I'm a mathematician, scientist, and philosopher that tends to question almost all things in existence. I was raised as Roman Catholic and in 1606 went to the Jesuit college to study classical studies such as science, mathematics, and metaphysics, and also was taught scholastic commentary such as acting, music, dancing, poetry, and fencing. My father wanted me to join the parliament after college, but I was only 20, and you have to be 27 years of age to join parliament. After being taught by Prince Maurice, I began studying theology and medicine after my general studies. I believe that all people have a hidden light, whether man or woman, and if you think, therefore you are, and it does not matter what gender you are, since everyone is the same. What are your views on this subject, Jean-Jacques Rousseau?
Well, Mr. Descartes, I do not believe in gender equality, but I will justify that later. I was born on June 28, 1712 in Geneva, Switzerland. I'm a composer, writer, philosopher, and liberator. I'm currently Calvinist, but at a time in my life, I converted to Catholicism in order to regain my Genevan citizenship. I was taught by Baron de Warens and myself. I never attended a university. I believe that man is good by nature, but society corrupts him. A man can become free by escaping society and obeying the rules he gives himself, but a whole society cannot become free. I do not believe in gender equality in the workplace or equality in independence. I believe that in a culture, a woman should be viewed as weaker than men. What are your opinions on this issue, Adam Smith?
Unlike your philosophical notions, Mr. Rousseau, I believe in gender equality to an extent of cultural awareness, labor, and independence. I was born in Kilcodley, Scotland on June 16, 1723, within a Christian family. In the year 1737, I studied to become a social philosopher at the University of Glasgow at the age of 14. I also developed a liking to liberty, reason, and free speech. Later, I became a moral philosopher, a political pioneer, and also a landlord, a farmer, a master manufacturer, and a merchant. Later, I developed a nickname of Father of Modern Economics. I'm best known for two classic works of books, The Theory of Moral Sentiments, written in 1759, and An Inquiry to the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations, written in 1776. These two books have many specific explanations on equality for all. Do you have a different opinion on gender equality, Professor John Locke?
No, I do not have a different opinion, Mr. Adam Smith. I was born 29th August 1632 in Rington to Puritan parents. In 1647, I went to Westminster School in London. I was the first to come up with the idea that at birth the mind was a blank slate, or tabula rasa. I was awarded a bachelor's degree in 1656 and a master's degree in 1658. I obtained a Bachelor of Medicine in 1674. I have studied medicine extensively during my time at Oxford. I am often classified as the first of the great English supremacists, the thought that you gain knowledge from sense experience. My most famous work was an essay concerning human understandings. Studying medicine was a large part why I became a philosopher because it made me very interested in the human mind. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, what are some of your thoughts specifically on the subject of religion and culture?
I believe gender equality differs in religion and culture. A woman and man worship the same and equally in religion, but are viewed differently in culture. As for culture, in infed.org, it says that I believe that a woman isn't worse than a man. She is and should be weaker and different, which I believe is entirely true. In Emily, I said that in her conduct, woman is enslaved by public opinion. In her belief, she is enslaved by authority. What I mean by that is that in a culture, a woman has an image that she must uphold. The correct image of a woman consists of being submissive and dependent on her husband. Also, a woman should believe and think what a society and authority wishes her to believe.
I, on the other hand, Mr. Rousseau, think that it is unfortunate that many women are not able to do certain things or have to do things forcefully because of their religion. I believe that this is terrible because all women should have the right to say no, even if it is against their culture. And according to Mr. Watson, the Encyclopedia Britannica states that I believe that all people have a hidden light no matter where the person is from. Violence towards women happens often, yet in many cultures, the women get in trouble if it is against their culture. As I wrote in my book, Discourse on Method, accept our own thoughts, there is nothing absolutely in our power. This supports this idea because even though you cannot change a religion or its rules, it is possible to think about how these rules could be avoided or what can happen so these laws will not have to be dealt with so often.
Thank you for your opinion, Mr. Rene Descartes. I, Adam Smith, feel that women's equality should be supported, as it is fair for all, as more work can be done and lower-class families can have a moderate amount of money to support themselves. Also, I think women should be supported, as women are discriminated because of certain religious beliefs, and don't have as much freedom as men do. For example, in places like the Middle East or Uganda, they are very particular on what women wear or do, whereas it is much more lenient for men. Looking at one of my greatest works, The Theory of Moral Sentiments, I discuss the role of sympathy in connecting self-interest with virtue. If the free market is allowed to function and people are affluent, they will have time to worry about the plight of the indigent. In a primitive society, people primarily focus upon survival. In a recent article by the Acton Institute, I argued that the market promoted virtues such as responsibility, honesty, frugality, ability, and self-control.
Thank you very much for your opinion, Professor Adam Smith. I believe that women should also be treated equally in all cultures and religions, because I believe that everyone is equal, as stated by WordPress. I made very significant points showing that women are a large part in society. Even though there are many different cultures and religions around the world, I believe that all women must have the same rights as men. As I stated in the essay concerning human understandings, women are not property, they are human beings. This obviously shows my thoughts on how I thought that women should be treated equally as everybody else in every culture.
Excellent opinion on how gender inequality differs throughout religion and culture, Mr. Locke. But I would also like to speak about the topic of jobs and education. Many jobs these days are specifically for men, and unfortunately for some jobs, women are getting paid less than men just because of their gender. In my book, Discourse on Method, I said, "It is not enough to have a good mind. The main thing is to use it well." This quote supports my thoughts because women can show how they are just as powerful and smart as men when it comes to certain jobs. Wikipedia also said that I believed anyone can control their own mind, which also supports this idea, because the more women show that they are the same as men, using their thoughts and opinions, then gender inequality will not be a big deal.
I agree with your opinions, however, I have separate notions. I believe that women should have the same working rights because women are a large part of society, as WordPress stated, that I thought that if the father died, then the mother is perfectly fine as a candidate to take care of the child. That shows that I think equally and that all people acknowledge that. I also thought that men and women should share the same responsibility and be respected, as I stated in an essay concerning human understandings. Finally, that women are to be honored and respected by children in the absence of a father. What is your position on this subject, Jean-Jacques Rousseau?
Unlike you, John Locke, I believe that women should not have jobs. A woman isn't equal to a man when it comes to education and occupation, which I believe is rational. I believe women should only be taught to do things for men and nothing else. I stated in Emily that the whole education of women ought to be relative to men. I do not think females should have equal education to men. A woman should not even have the option of attending a university. As for occupations, written in Wikipedia, I was said to believe that in a modern family, women's options are entirely limited to the roles of wife and mother. A woman should not have a profession that is the task of the husband. She must take care of her children, teaching the youngest, and take the roles of keeping the house in order and making meals. After all, someone must be responsible for those chores. Do you have the same views, Adam Smith?
I would have to kindly disagree with your opinions, Mr. Rousseau. I believe that women should have all the rights that men do, for example, job opportunities and education. I say this as a mother needs to take care of her children and teach them for educational purposes. I stated in my book, The Theory of Moral Sentiments, the solid and masculine virtues, and this is compatible with the traditional view that reasoning and ruling are activities of men and that women are lacking reason and self-control, so they must be ruled by men. In the recent writings by Mr. Thomas Sowell, I stated how no society can surely be flourishing and happy, of which the far greater part of the members are poor and miserable, which essentially means that if women can get good jobs with a high salary involved, then more work can be done to make a more flourishing community. This can be achieved with the help of men and with the help of women.
I enjoy your input on this matter, but I would also like to speak about the independence of women. I think that women should be able to have complete independence if they choose so because they are human beings. As I stated in an essay concerning human understandings, this establishes the woman's rights as a wife to cut her reliance on her husband. Although this is a very progressive idea, it is highly limited when considered in the context of the times. This shows that I believe in women being independent, but it is difficult to do so. Also, as stated by Encyclopedia Britannica, I clearly show the difficulties in a wife divorcing her husband, but do not disagree with the subject. This supports my thoughts on the fact that women should have the right to divorce their husband because they have human right to do so.
I believe that everyone is permitted to make their own decisions, whether men or women. Once again, Mr. Richard Watson stated in the Encyclopedia Britannica that I wanted to write in French so anyone, women and men, can read my book if they desire. I also believe that anyone can change their, or have, passions and goals. I once said in my book, Discourse on Method, I think, therefore I am. This I was existence as itself, therefore this I is gender neutral and is the same for both men and women. This reasoning is very complicated, and it takes a little thought to understand this notion. Women deserve to have independence because we were all created the same with thoughts of just I, and not the thoughts of how separate sexes are better or worse than one another.
Very interesting input, Professor Descartes. I too find that women should have as equal freedom as men do, as women are fully capable of achieving greatness like men and can do work like men, like hunting, or whatever they want for that matter. When I wrote the book, The Wealth of Nations, I stated, to upend the mercantile mercantilicism had held that wealth was fixed and finite, and that the only way to prosper was to hoard gold and tariff products from abroad. This meant that nations should sell their goods to other countries while buying nothing in return. Predictably, the nations fell into rounds of regulatory tariffs and that choked international trade. To this more efficiently, there must be a lot of workers, which include men and women. In an article written by the Investopedia, I wanted people to practice thrift, hard work, and enlightened self-interest. I thought the practice of enlightened self-interest was natural for the majority of people. In my favorite example, a butcher does not supply meat based on a good-hearted intentions because he profits by selling meat. If the meat he sells is poor, he will not have to repeat customers, and thus no profit. Therefore, it's in the butcher's interest to sell good meat at a price that customers are willing to pay, so that both parties benefit in every transaction. I believe that the ability to think long-term would curb most businesses from abusing customers. Well, if that was enough, I looked to government to enforce laws.
I completely disagree with your views, Adam Smith. Women are more dependent on men than men are on women, therefore making them less independent. I wrote in Emily that women are dependent on men because of both their desires and their needs. We men could subsist more easily without women than they could without us. I also wrote that when woman complains about the unjust inequalities placed on her by man, she is wrong. This inequality is by no means a human institution, or at least it is not the work of prejudice, but of reason. What I mean by that is that inequality is reasonable, not something created by man. In the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, it states that I believe that humans are good by nature. My view is that people are corrupted by society, therefore making gender inequality necessary in the culture.
It seems as though Adam Smith, John Locke, and Rene Descartes all believe in gender equality because they all think that men and women are created equal, whereas Jean-Jacques Rousseau is opposed to the idea because he believes that women are inferior to men and always will be. We put our poll on our website, philosophytalk.com, to get your views on the subject, so don't forget to check that out after the show. Well, folks, that's all the time we have for today, but we'll be back after a short commercial break with the incredible Thomas Hobbes discussing an upcoming issue I think you'll be interested in.